All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we are walking through the absolutely chaotic 2026 timeline of the Ontario-Michigan Waste Corridor. But more importantly, we're going to discover exactly how 905 Wood's pivot entirely to provenance data is securing the industrial bioeconomy high ground. We are tracking a fascinating and honestly wild sequence of events that rocked the North American waste trade this year, and we'll look at the specific technology that is allowing smart operators to not just survive it, but thrive. Look at this number, 5. If you were trying to base your cross-border business plan on any single headline in 2026, you would have been completely crushed. Why? Because we saw 5 massive regulatory reversals in just 7 months. Think about that for a second. That is 5 distinct times the rules of the game flipped on their head. You just can't run a physical logistics business when the ground under your feet is shifting that fast.
So let's get into Section 1, the moving border and the 2026 tariff whipsaw.
This geopolitical river rose and fell incredibly fast this year. In February, the Supreme Court actually struck down tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, citing emergency powers overreach. But then, literally 4 days later, a temporary 10% global tariff was slapped on. Fast forward to July 1st, and the U.S. declines the CUSMA Free Trade Agreement's automatic 16-year renewal, which forced a highly volatile annual review process. Then, Donald Trump announces new 50% tariffs on certain Canadian imports, drawing immediate pushback from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. And then, abruptly, on August 18th, those exact tariffs were paused just days before they were supposed to take effect. It's a continuous, brutal regulatory whipsaw. Which brings us to Section 2. The Ontario-Michigan Waste Corridor. To really understand why this specific corridor is such a massive political target, you just have to look at the staggering scale of it. Ontario exports 3.46 million tons of municipal solid waste annually. That makes up an incredible 14.35% of everything buried in Michigan landfills. Let that sink in. More than 1 in every 7 tons of trash buried in the entire state of Michigan actually crossed the border from Canada. And then you add to this Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer's proposed budget measure to hike tipping fees. Right now, that fee is sitting at just 36 cents a ton, but this proposal aims to push it to $5 a ton, explicitly to curb those out-of-state imports. So operators are facing this tightening regulatory pincer, right? You've got volatile tariffs threatening from the federal side in Washington and massive fee hikes threatening from the state side in Lansing.
Moving on to Section 3, the provenance data pivot.
This is where we hit the canonical 905 Wood thesis, and this is absolutely crucial to understand. The data, not the wood, is the product. When the border is constantly threatening physical commodities, the only truly safe asset is verified digital proof. See, the physical wood is what all the politicians are fighting over. But the data generated by 905 Wood's SAWS application, that's what's still standing when the headlines inevitably change again tomorrow. If you own the verified record of origin, you are completely insulated from the chaos.
And that is exactly where DMRV comes in: digital measurement, reporting, and verification. Think of it like a bulletproof digital passport for physical waste. It is the exact provenance data required to transform chaotic construction waste into a highly valuable biocarbon asset. Because this data mints a Puro Earth CO2 removal certificate, it holds its value no matter what the policymakers decide to do next.
Let's break down Section 4. The digital refinery workflow. So, you might be wondering, how do you actually manufacture this high-purity data when you're out in the mud of an active construction site? Well, the digital refinery application UI workflow is remarkably seamless. It starts right on a phone with a simple request for quote. From there, it passes an edge compliance gate in under 500 milliseconds, meaning the truck never actually has to stop and wait. Any hard calls are automatically escalated to a cloud model council for AI consensus, which ultimately outputs a SORC-ready, audit-grade PDF document. This entire stack right here is what's known as the sentient bridge. By operationalizing the Google Pixel 11 Pro, running Android 17 and the Tensor G5 chip with a LiteRT AI stack, 905 Wood creates this completely impartial trust machine right at the edge. And up in the cloud, you've got a model console, featuring Claude, GPT, and Gemini, cross-verifying the data. One AI model alone might hallucinate, sure, but a council of them reliably underwrites a highly valuable carbon credit.
Now, contrast the massive liability of physical wood against the power of this data asset. Over on the physical side, that wood faces potential 40% transshipment penalties, which can hit operators for a really painful $1,140 per truck. But on the data side, your digital asset yields a $1,034 clean classification saving plus a $2,674 carbon dividend per load. The physical material is literally a liability. The data SaaS service is a lucrative asset.
And because of those numbers, a simple $125 certificate of origin shields you from those transshipment traps and delivers an unbelievable 812% ROI. That is the undeniable power of owning the truth. It's not just a compliance checkbox. It is quite literally one of the highest return investments you can make on a single load. Finally, Section 5, minting biocarbon certificates. So how do we actually bridge this local waste data directly into the global circular bioeconomy? Well, to mint a CO2 removal certificate, which is anchored at a very robust $135 per ton, Puro.Earth demands incredibly stringent compliance. And 905 Wood maps perfectly to this standard. By specifically citing Ontario Regulation 347 across 88 different contaminants, the system outputs an audit PDF that completely satisfies Puro.Earth's rigorous validation requirements. Understanding this shift is absolutely vital right now because Ontario's window is closing fast. With a 2029 R-wood ban on clean wood in landfills, a looming 2034 landfill capacity cliff, and a 2036 circle levy ceiling hitting $60 per ton, the old way of just burying this material is over. The 905 Wood SaaS platform firmly secures Ontario's industrial leadership in the Canadian circular bioeconomy, totally regardless of what border volatility happens next. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. When trade rules and tariffs are literally changing every single month, when that river underneath the bridge is constantly rising and falling, who truly owns the future? Is it the ones physically moving the trash across the border, just trying to guess the next tariff rate? Or is it the ones owning the sentient bridge of truth? The value has shifted. The data, not just the wood, is the product. Think on that. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.